done.
Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir Mohamad put Malaysia on the world map by making it modern and progressive.
He's passionate about seeing his country develop, his people advance. I don't know how you can actually, divorce yourself from that.
It was that kind of visionary leadership which I think Dr. Mahathir provided, which I think was not quite provided by his predecessors.
It's a matter of knowing him and talking to him more often, and then you will understand his nature.
Politics is a different matter. It requires a different persona and a different performance, and he's able to deliver that. And quite often that requires him to be very outspoken and somewhat nasty.
He just couldn't tolerate a fundamental principle of democracy, that is the right to dissent.
He has his own very clear views as to what he wants to do. He believes that he's right, the world is wrong.
I'm not a populist because many of the things I do are not supported by the people. People criticize me. But I feel that over time they will understand why these things should be.
Mahathir Mohamad, from student politician to popular doctor, and now the country's Prime Minister. In 10 years, he had risen from political exile to the country's top post. He was very popular with his people, the Malays. They made up a majority of Malaysia's population. However, being mostly poor farmers, they shared only a small part of the country's wealth. Mahathir had been championing the Malay cause, and now, at 56 years old, he was in the ultimate position to advocate change. Unlike his predecessors, the West did not inspire Mahathir.
Well, I decided to look east because I found that the West had already taken for granted their growth, whereas in the East there was Japan, which was trying to recover from the World War, and they were very dynamic.
In his book, The Malay Dilemma, published 11 years previously, Mahathir had written that the Malays were economically behind the other races.
Well, I believe the poor performance of the Malays was due to their value system. And I think that if they adopt the Japanese value system, they would prosper the way the Japanese prospered. So I tried to change their value system so as to be compatible with growth, with success.
By introducing the Look East policy, Malaysians for the first time, I think, began to recognize that there are other paths to modernization, that there are latecomer industrializing countries from which one can learn from.
Mahathir's administration promised to be clean, efficient and trustworthy. He got everyone in government service to wear name tags, a way of ensuring accountability.
Dr. Mahathir hoped to instill in the bureaucracy a sense of purpose and good work habits that he himself practiced.
Well, I wake up early enough to say my prayers, and after that, of course, I had my breakfast, and I leave to be on time at the office because I have to clock in.
The punch clock system was to instill work discipline, something he saw lacking when he was the Minister for Trade.
I look out of the window at 3 o'clock and I saw the staff all going home. So I asked, why is it that they are going home at 3 o'clock? I was told that they want to avoid the traffic. That actually resulted in my introducing punch cards.
He was realistic about his efforts, though. He used to joke that at least now the civil servants had to arrive on time at work before taking their first coffee break.
Soon after taking office, Mahathir had a falling out with the British government. As a result, he asked everyone to buy British-made goods only as a last resort.
Mahathir introduced the so-called Buy British Last policy, which was also retaliation for the decision by the Thatcher government to raise the cost of fees for foreign students. Many Malaysians, like others from throughout the Commonwealth, continued to get education in the United Kingdom.
The rocky relationship started a month earlier. On September 7th, 1981, Malaysia carried out a dawn raid at the London Stock Exchange. After a 4-hour buying frenzy, Malaysia legally took over Guthrie, a British corporation of oil palm and rubber plantations. It took the British completely by surprise.
If we wanted to, we could have taken over Guthrie just like that and pay them whatever compensation we think we should give. But here we went into the market. It was unfair for the British to say that this was backdoor nationalization.
Many other Malaysians supported him and thought it was time that it was overdue for Malaysians to stand up to the British, the former colonial power, and I think he got quite a bit of support in that respect.
But more importantly, this Buy British Last policy was also the beginning of the rejection of trying to emulate the West in terms of modernization, and recognizing with the Look East policy, recognizing that there were alternative models of modernization.
After a year in office, Mahathir faced his real test, the 1982 general elections. His appointment as the Prime Minister was a result of his predecessor stepping down. This time, however, he had to earn the people's vote. They won easily. Mahathir and his deputy Musa Hitam were given the green light to reform the country. By now, 57-year-old Mahathir's family had grown up and were mostly away.
My parents were hankering for grandchildren for a while, and none of us kids were married or having kids at that time, not even thinking about it. So it so happened they went on an official visit to Pakistan, and my mom's program included a visit to an orphanage.
When I came back, I decided that we should adopt either Pakistani children or Afghan children. But Afghans are very proud people. They don't want their children to be adopted. So I got these 2 Pakistani children.
And then they came home and discussed it with all of us and got the okay. We all thought, okay, that's fine. And a few months later, Masa Maizura came to live with us.
With 7 children, Mahathir's family was now complete. Mahathir enjoyed being the leader, but political rivalry within his own party soon threatened his top position, something he wasn't willing to give up. Malaysia's monarchs. 9 sultans and a king were highly respected by the Malays, who formed the majority of the population. In 1984, as Malaysia was going to get a new king, Mahathir introduced a controversial piece of legislation, one that would cost him much needed support.
In Malaysia, the feeling is quite different than in Britain. In Britain, the Queen or the King would not question the Prime Minister. If a bill is presented to her, she would immediately sign the bill. So it is necessary to modify the law so that the power of the king to actually reject a bill passed by representatives of the people should be diminished.
Consequently, by the end of his first term as Prime Minister, 62-year-old Mahathir sensed trouble within his Malay political party, UMNO. People were questioning his leadership.
At that time, people did not see development in Malaysia. They don't link me with any success of the country. And because of that, there were challenges to my position as Prime Minister.
In 1986, Mahathir's first Deputy Prime Minister, Musa Hitam, resigned, instigating a call for new leadership. Whoever wins the seat of party president in the 1987 UMNO elections will be by default the country's Prime Minister. Mahathir was feeling confident.
As long as I am the Prime Minister and I am able to persuade the cabinet to support me, I will stay in power.
However, after the ballots were counted, Mahathir was disappointed by the results.
I thought I would win very easily, so I very nearly lost. I won only by 43 votes.
But Mahathir could still lose his prime ministership. His rivals challenged the election results in court. But the verdict wasn't the only thing Mahathir was waiting for.
I was pregnant and expecting my first child. It was my father's first grandchild as well. So I was a bit removed from it all. My mom came to be with me when I was about to deliver. And I remember she was always very tense. She didn't talk too much, but I know she was worried. And, there's a lot of letters going back and forth.
Back in Kuala Lumpur, people were still questioning Mahathir's leadership. Dozens of people suspected of stirring up trouble were detained without trial.
Anyone who criticized him, criticized his policies, were against him, and they were a threat to his political base. And he had to do something to deter them. Not even a dog was barking on the streets at that time. That was the fear instilled.
Many of the things I do are not supported by the people. People criticize me. But I feel that over time they will understand why these things should be done.
While local press freedom was curtailed, the foreign media was free to report. Mahathir had a love-hate relationship with them.
My experience with the Western media is that they try to find the worst things about you. And if they don't find, they have a tendency to even invent and to label you. For example, I was called a dictator.
Essentially, he didn't believe in a free press, regarding journalists as basically unelected representatives of nobody. While he could control the domestic media, he disliked the foreign press because it was inclined to be critical and disrespectful.
In order for Mahathir to carry out his policies more effectively, the judiciary had to change.
Unlike our first three prime ministers who were lawyers, Mahathir was a medical doctor. He had very little understanding of the role of the judiciary, very little understanding of the doctrine of separation of powers, which is understood in the flourishing democracies around the world. He felt that the judiciary has become a threat to his entire position as Prime Minister of the country. Hence, he had to do something.
Lawyers tended to focus only on the legal aspect of anything that they do, whether it is legal or not legal. But doctors want to heal. They want to put things right. So the country was, at the time when it took over, the country was not developing as fast as it should. So I thought that my duty was to increase the speed of development.
He was seen to be completely undemocratic, certainly authoritarian, and I guess his most virulent opponents called him a dictator.
Throughout the 1980s, Mahathir fought to consolidate his power. But on January 17th, 1989, he nearly lost everything.
When he normally goes to bed, this was his procedure. He will lie down, take up a book and read. Right? And I'll be passing around before I get to bed. And then that particular night, it was about 11 o'clock already, or past. I saw him just put on his book like that, and he was quiet, looking up. And then she said, call a doctor. Just what. And if he says call a doctor,